good. Seal my fate with what I added today. No. My vote on the budget will be my vote on the budget will not be in sync with yours. I will be naysayer on all of them. No. Oh no, the procedural ones are fine. For the main budget. Okay. For the $47. Yeah, number 7. Because 4, 5, and 6 are basically procedural, aren't they, Ed? Yeah. I mean, the budget itself is number 7. Great. Any good news?
Yeah, we'll wait and see what happens today. Then we'll say. Oh, I got one call and a couple of one other phone call.
Just observing. You know, one call means about 20 people. You get 3 calls, that's 60 people.
Yeah. So you talked to Ryan a little bit. Where's he going to go today? Yeah, you talked to him.
You know where I'm going, so. Okay. Nothing overly elaborate. What we need.
Good morning. At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners for Thursday, July 9. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Klicka.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. All are present. We do have a quorum. Would you join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For those who are present, if you have a noise-making device, would ask that you turn it to silent mode or off so as not to interfere with our electronic communications. All of our meetings are streamed, and anyway, would appreciate your cooperation on that item. We do have a special presentation to make this morning. I'm going to ask Sheriff Calvin Hayden to join me at the podium at this time. Sheriff, I know that you have a special presentation to make this morning recognizing a citizen who took extraordinary action, so I'll turn the podium over to you for introduction as well as comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when you're in public safety, we do things a little different. And days aren't your normal day as you proceed through your life. In June 9th of this year, I was having one of those days where everything went wrong. I was supposed to go to a political thing at it's called Symphony in the Flint Hills, and it was down by Wichita, and I had to be there about 2 o'clock, and my day went terribly wrong and bad. And my wife and I were frustrated, and she'd lost a phone, and it just went, I had loose cattle in the area, one of those days where everything went wrong. So I was, we were chipping our teeth at each other, worrying about how late we were for this event, and it was really a cool thing to be at. And we're driving down I-35, and we're just amazed. And we come on, and just one more thing, here's a traffic jam. There's a lady running up I-35 trying to block traffic, and I thought, well, what in the world is going on? Drove a little further, and I see a lady, Denise Kern, doing CPR on a guy who, in the middle of the interstate, on a gentleman and a lady who had wrecked their motorcycle. Pulled over the side of the road, went over and helped Denise get an airway on this gentleman. And as EMTs got there, we got him stabilizing. In a minute we got there, he started breathing. But he wasn't in good shape. But he ended up being transported by the ambulance to a hospital, trauma center. And his injuries were pretty darn severe, and we knew that. So I had blood all over my hands, and so did Denise. So I handed her my card and said, look, if you need me for anything, we'll get this done. Washed up, went on down Symphony of the Flint Hills. Some of you may think that's weird, but that's the way we do things. Life goes on, you do what you can do and get out of the way. Denise left too. And Denise, if you'd come up here, you and your daughter, I'd like to introduce you to Denise Kern. Denise called me the next day, and I didn't know Denise from Adam. And she said the last time, she called and asked if this person had survived the accident. So I checked, and initially he survived for a day. And I called Denise, said last I heard he's doing okay. So it was a great feeling for both of us. And then when I was talking to her, she goes, you know, the last person I did CPR on was my husband. Denise is the widow of Michael Kern, who was an officer in Olathe. He was preparing his motorcycle for a presidential visit, and he had a heart attack. And she did CPR on him in their driveway. So I got to meet her through unusual circumstances. Denise is a nurse, and she is such an awesome caregiver for the citizens of Johnson County. Not only is she taking care of us through nursing, but her family were first responders and in public safety, and here she was in the middle of an interstate saving a life. And I just thought, wow, how much better does it get than that? So I got with our staff and decided to give her an award for meritorious service. It's just amazing to me that we would meet under those circumstances. And when you look back at those things, you understand that God put you in the right place at the right time, but you don't realize that as you're going through this frustrating day. So it all worked to the good. The man didn't survive, but we did everything we could to keep him that way, and ultimately it was a successful treatment as far as we were concerned, and Denise, you did great. So thank you, Denise Kern. Denise, we got a couple awards here for you. One is a Meritorious Civilian Award for jumping in there and just showing up and getting the job done. And we also had a little plaque signed by me and the undersheriff to thank you for your service. And thank you so much. We appreciate your service. If you'd like to say anything, we'd appreciate it.
I just want to say thank you for acknowledging the citizens. It was a stressful day for me too, because it brought back a lot of memories, but at least this gentleman, at least his family was able to say goodbye to him, even though he did lose his life. But where's your award? Because you
Right here.
you did a great job as well. I couldn't have done it without him. So thank you very much.
Denise, thank you very much for that extraordinary action in assisting a citizen. And Sheriff, thank you also. But that's in your line of duty, as I understand. It is. But it's amazing to understand you're stepping up and helping someone who really needed that assistance. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if you'll stick around, just identify. Thanks again. Congratulations. I'm not sure how many of us would have taken that action out in the middle of a busy freeway. But Denise, again, thank you very much. At this time, we will turn to the public comment portion of the agenda. If there's anyone who would like to address the commission on an item which does not later appear on the agenda, would invite you to the podium, state your name and address, limit your comments to 5 minutes, and we'll be glad to receive that information. Mr. Raby.
Good morning, Tom Raby, 17513 West 113th Street in Olathe. I hate to follow something like that. That was impressive. Thank you. My wife and I voted Tuesday, and I know you may hear something about voting, blah, blah, blah. But we had no problems. We had no lines. And we got to observe something that I'm sure most people didn't get to observe. We saw a young person with 4 children try to fish through all kinds of wallets and purses looking for an acceptable ID card. And we had seen this person drive up and parked beside us. And we don't know what happened, but the the volunteers who worked the voting were very courteous, very patient, and I guess, and it's only a guess, that maybe she was given a provisional ballot because she apparently had no current Kansas driver's license. And when we got outside, my wife and I both looked at the vehicle she had driven up in, and it had a neighboring state's license plates on it. So I hope she gets that fixed by November. And then, not a criticism, but some observations. I had someone who lives in Overland Park say to me yesterday that he had a water leak in his neighborhood, and he called the water company. I didn't challenge him because I knew what he meant, but there aren't any water companies in Johnson County that I know of, especially after everyone should have gotten that nice magazine with a special edition that said water, water everywhere, and maybe not everywhere, but gave a pretty good rundown of water in the county. But a couple things were left out. The fellow from Water One did give a good description of the operation of Water One, but he didn't go into any of the history of Water One, which has only existed approximately 30 years. And that the water districts are somewhat of a government thing. The employees all are on capers. So they're not private utilities. And additionally, and I'm not faulting the editors of the Johnson County Magazine, but they could have put a note after this article, which did exclude the municipalities and areas that weren't served by Water One. They could have mentioned Rural Water 7, City of Olathe, City of DeSoto, and all 3 of these, they do process water. Nobody makes water, they process water. And the other thing is that Water 7 absorbed Consolidated Rural Water District 6 last year, and they serve a very large area of the county, and people don't seem to know that. And most people don't care, quite frankly, and you can't blame them. But those were a couple of things I thought I would bring up this morning, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? If there is no one else to be heard, the public comment portion of our agenda is concluded. There are no notes for the record this morning, so we'll turn to the consent portion of our agenda. Will the clerk please read the proposed consent agenda items?
Item number 1, consider approving the July 19th, 2018 business session minutes. Item number 2, consider appointing Lori Olson as the 4th District Representative to the Museum Advisory Council through May 7th, 2021. And item number 3, consider approving the Kansas Department of Transportation, KDOT, Form 1309, Authority to Award Contract, Commitment of County Funds, to commit and authorize payment of $154,000 for the replacement of the 127th Street Bridge over Captain Creek.
Is there any item Commissioner would like to have considered separately? Is there anyone present who would like to have an item considered separately? If not, it's back before the commission. A motion would be in order. Mr. Osterhaus.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Moving to the action agenda, next item.
Item number 4, resolution number 062-18. Consider authorizing a levy of property taxes in amount in support of the budget for the Johnson County Taxing District for FY 2019, funded by property tax revenue exceeding that of FY 2018, adjusted by the 2017 Consumer Price Index, CPI, for all urban consumers and providing disclosure of the revenue and tax difference.
Robin Symes with the Budget Office. This resolution does, as the clerk said, approve or allow the county to levy more property taxes than the prior year, adjusted for valuation changes that are acceptable, and then also for the CPI adjustment.
Okay. This item was reviewed and reports were made to the commission last week at the agenda review. Are there any questions by commissioners? All right, is there anyone present who would like to address the commission on this item? If there's no one to be heard, it's back before the commission, and a motion would be in order. Do I hear a motion? Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I move to approve and adopt resolution number 062-18, authorizing a levy of property taxes in support of the budget for the Johnson County Taxing District for FY 2019, funded by property tax revenues exceeding that of FY 2018, adjusted by the 2017 Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, and providing disclosure of the revenue and tax difference.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Any further questions or discussion? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, this is a procedural matter, and it's an optional determination by the county attorney that we should approve this to avoid any potential questions about process in the future.
Yes, sir, it's procedural under the statute, and we recommend that we go ahead and pass it, even though the legislature a couple of years ago took counties and cities out of that, but because we approve budgets for other taxing entities other than the county, we recommend that we go ahead and adopt this disclosure statement.
Very good. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. If there's no further comments or questions, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye, motion carried. Next item.
Item number 5, resolution number 06318. Consider authorizing a levy of property taxes in support of the budget for the Johnson County Library Taxing District for FY 2019, funded by the property tax revenue exceeding that of FY 2018, adjusted by the 2017 Consumer Price Index, CPI, for all urban consumers, and providing disclosure of the revenue and tax difference.
Again, Mr. Jarrett, this item is similar to the previous one.
Yes, sir, this is a procedural disclosure statement required by statute. In this case, there isn't an exception, though, and we are required to do it.
Okay, Mr. Klicka.
I know that the general county budget is affected by the Consumer Price Index, but is that the same thing? Clarification, is both the parks and libraries affected by that same?
Yes, there's a computation, and within that computation, there are changes for the valuation adjustments and then also the CPI.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there anyone who would like to comment on this item? If not, do I hear a motion? Mr. Schaefer?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve and adopt resolution number 062-18, authorizing a levy of property taxes in support of the budget for the Johnson County Taxing District for FY 2019, funded by property tax revenue exceeding that of that.
Chairman?
Am I on the right one? I'm on the wrong one, yeah.
Try number five.
You're close. There we go. I'm close. Okay, there we go.
One more word in there.
6318, there we go. I knew I was halfway wrong there. Okay, I'll do this one. Try this one. I move to approve and adopt resolution number 063-18, authorizing a levy of property taxes in support of the budget for the Johnson County Library Taxing District for FY 2019, funded by property tax revenue exceeding that of FY 2018, adjusted by the 2017 Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, and providing disclosure of the revenue tax and tax difference.
Second.
Motion is before us. The resolution has been seconded. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I will be supporting these two procedural options, but I will have comments on the actual budget resolution.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen. Aye. Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye, motion carried. Next item.
Item number 6, resolution number 064-18. Consider authorizing a levy of property taxes in support of the budget for the Johnson County Park and Recreation Taxing District for the FY 2019, funded by the property tax revenue exceeding that of FY 2018, adjusted by the 2017 Consumer Price Index, CPI, for all urban consumers, and providing the disclosure of the revenue and tax difference.
All right, again, this item is similar to the previous two items. Any questions by the commission? Anyone wish to comment on this? If not, it's back for the commission. Mr. Osterhaus?
I'll move to approve and adopt resolution number 063-18, authorizing a levy of property taxes in support of the budget for the Johnson County Library Taxing District for 2019, funded by property tax revenue exceeding that of, nope, sorry, I'm on the.
You and Ron need to change places.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I thought my eyesight was.
There we go.
If you had it on paper.
Extra large print.
I'll move to approve and adopt resolution number 064-18, authorizing a levy of property taxes in support of the budget for the Johnson County Park and Recreation Taxing District for fiscal year 2019, funded by property tax revenue exceeding that of fiscal year 2018, adjusted by the 2017 Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, and providing disclosure of the revenue and tax difference.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the resolution 064-18. Any further questions or discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen. Aye. Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye, motion carried. Next item.
Item number 7, resolution number 065-18. Consider adopting the FY 2019 budget and the FY 2019 to 2023 capital improvement program as proposed.
Mr. Neufeld, Budget Director.
Good morning, Scott Neufeld with the Budget Office. This is a formal step that we take every year about this time. It is the culmination of much work, not only on behalf of the board, but the manager's office and departments throughout the organization. And so before we get into it, I do want to thank all those folks out in the field and all the departments for all the work they've done. And we appreciate it very much. A lot of work goes into this. And I'd also like to thank my staff who work long and hard on this as well. There's a number of bullets here. I'm not going to go through all of them. We've had a number of discussions about the particulars. As you know, we're looking at a little over $815 million in expenditures, $281 in reserves. So that totals to about 1.1 billion for this year. There's some key figures in there. We had a lot of discussion about the mill levy, and so right now we're functioning under certain estimates on the mill levy. It's always an estimate this time, and so I kind of wanted to focus on that. For the county taxing district, the current estimated mill levy reduction is 0.378 mills. This is with the intention that once the exemptions go through that are in process and our estimated adjustments through the second round of appeals happen, that we will still be at least at 0.25 mills in terms of a rollback for the county taxing district. So what we've built in is there's a list of exemptions that are due to go through. It's not an appeal situation, it's just exempt properties, much like that school was last year, that meet the criteria. There's one item in there that we're not positive about, but we've got those factored in, and then we have an estimate on how much the needle will move with those second round appeals that come through BOTA between now and October. So the 0.378 is designed to be at or above 0.25 mills as far as the rollback for the county when the valuation's done. So that's really what that 0.378 is intended to be as far as a target. With Park and Library in their taxing districts, we have a different methodology, which is based on direction of the board, formal vote that we had, which is to shoot for a rollback approximating 0.02 mills and 0.015 mills for parks and library, respectively, 0.02 for the park district. That was based on scaling back a bit the growth that they've experienced and doing a slight rollback. And so we've had a lot of discussions about how to look at that, but it's roughly equivalent to 300,000 below a constant mill levy for parks and 230 for library. Again, on those, we did build in that it would still be that rollback after the exemptions go through. Because of the smaller dollar amounts and the smaller mill levy, we didn't build in the appeal piece, but we're trying to get to that intent at the time of the board, which is to roll back 0.002 for parks and 0.05 for library, and it equates to those numbers. But again, they're all estimates at this time. So I know that's a lot of numbers and a lot of complexity, but that was really the piece that's hardest to understand, and I think was the subject for the most conversation by the board, is those mill levies for the park district and the library district. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board for questions or further discussion.
All right, Scott, let me clarify. Again, we estimate what a budget reduction would be to the mill levy. But what we really do is authorize a reduction of a sum of money. And then based upon the final valuation in October, the mill levy is determined. Is that right?
That's correct.
So with the estimated quarter mill reduction in the general fund, that would relate to what dollar amount?
The ultimate quarter mill would be slightly over $2.5 million.
Okay.
Just a hair over that.
And for parks, the small mill levy reduction would be equal to what number?
Approximately, just a little bit under 300,000.
Okay.
And library would be just a little under 230,000.
Okay. All right. So those are really the amounts that we focus on, and we anticipate that a reduction of those amounts would reflect that lower mill levy.
Yes.
You know, I would make this comment. I think in all cases, if this is approved, it should be applied to the general levies of both the county, the parks, and the libraries, rather than the capital levy for the latter two.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do is work with them to figure out how that fits best with their plans for next year. Obviously, on the capital side, that's frequently tied to debt service, and so we'll kind of build it out and work with them for exactly how to do that, but I think that'll work out fine.
Right. Okay. Mr. Klicka?
Scott, first of all, this budget all has to be together, all to include the parks and libraries and the general fund. It all has to be rolled together. I probably by error, I thought we were going to separate these items.
We need to, we can have separate discussions and motions related to what ultimately rolls in, but it is one agenda item because it's all part of the total county budget, even though they're separate taxing districts. So it's all under that umbrella.
Let me answer that. If the commission would like to have separate votes on the general fund and parks and then libraries, that's fine.
I would appreciate that.
We'll have to
because,
circle back
I'm
to
kind of
one
in a
big
conflicting type of situation here, and I
Right.
would appreciate that if we
Yeah,
could.
it's no problem. Okay, other questions? All right. Mr. Newfield, thank you very much. Is there anyone present who would like to address the commission on this item? All right, if there's no one to be heard, the item is back before the commission, so let's do this. Let's take the,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Parliamentarian, can we take these three separately? Then do we need a motion to put them together?
You can take them through separately. If you intend to do that, I would build up rather than approve the general fund first and then the others. I would start with approving the park and rec and then the library, and then if there are any other pieces. And then once you get those settled, adopt the entire resolution, given the whatever changes may be made in those two.
Okay, all right, thank you. We will do that. So the first item will be the budget for the library. Any questions, comments? Do I hear a motion? Mr. Ashcraft.
I do not have a motion, Mr. Chairman. I had a comment.
Okay, sure.
Yes. The issue and my comments are actually related, I guess, to both component, but I'll speak to the library. A concern that I have had over the years is that we have a revenue-based budget philosophy. Whatever the revenues are, we spend them. And in this case, we have a strategic plan. Both the libraries and parks did strategic plans, and I commend staff for those efforts. Within those strategic plans was an expectation of, I believe, a 5% growth each year, and that growth was intended to bolster the development of parks or libraries. That was passed by the commission, and I respect that. But for the last couple of years, and this year in particular, we actually have had increases in excess of 5%. That 5% is built in the strategic plan, makes sense, but that excess is a perfect example of revenue-based budgeting. And I struggle with that because every year, Mr. Chairman, since I've been on the commission, except for the first, one of the things I do is I do a survey of residents in the district, the 5th district. And the first year I did it, about 11% of the people indicated that they had a concern about taxes and the growth of government. Well, this past year, and some of us may remember some of the energy that was generated with some of the double-digit increases in assessed valuations, nearly 35% of the respondents expressed a deep concern about tax increases and how we always seem to be spending money. And we do a lot of good things in this budget. Generally, and in these two particular components, do a lot of good things, but it's based upon revenues, not based upon performance. And I have harped on that and will continue to harp on that, Mr. Chairman, because I do not believe it's fair to taxpayers to constantly spend just because we can spend. Consequently, Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that we not only reduce the mill levy half, but the full component above the 5%. So that would be another 0.015%, so a total of 0.03%. And I will make a motion to that extent and look for a second.
And I would make one caveat, because I had the opportunity to discuss this with Commissioner Ashcraft. I think we're talking about an additional .02 mils and an additional, oh, well, you said the percent, which is the differential, but so right now we're at approximately .02 mils for parks, and it's not 2%, it's another .02 mils.
I'm
and
sorry,
another
yes.
.015 mils for
Yes.
library.
And it does not go to the base increase, but it does go to the .75 mil increase that was passed, I believe, 3 years ago, Mr. Chairman.
16.
2 years ago.
Yeah, well, I support a reduction in the mill levy for both the libraries and the parks. But I think with the activities that they have ongoing, both in the capital area, and those capital expenditures also require additional operating expenses, that's going too far. I do support the approximate 300,000 reduction in the parks budget, and the approximately 200,000, a little over reduction in libraries. But I think as those capital projects come online, to me, they're going to have to look at operating expense increases. Mr. Klicka?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unlike my colleague here, I'm having difficulty with the library and parks budget from a different perspective. In both the library and the parks, it is our most focused type of services that we provide to the general public. At the number of people that utilize both those services is astronomical. It is very, very active, very, very strong. And these are services that are directly made available to the citizens. It's not part of the administration of the county and so forth. It's a direct service program to these communities. And I've served on the Parks Board for a number of years, and I realize we're only asking for a token reduction in their budgets from the big picture standpoint. But from the park standpoint, we've asked the parks to open up new parks. They're now somewhere around 34 parks that are opened up or will be opened up here shortly. We have not increased. We have not increased a lot of the support systems for those operations, and we're working diligently in doing so. But one of the challenges that we're facing there is the issue of security. Security, we've been managing. We're managing about 34 parks with about 16 to 18 patrol folks, and on a 24/7 basis. I find that very difficult to deal with and comprehend, especially when we want to take a preventive measures as far as maintaining safety at these parks and these facilities. I would advocate, and the reason I will not support this, I'd rather turn that money from the parks, the 300,000, and have it turned back, let the parks hold on to it, but allocate it for security additional. This would cover maybe about another 2.5 positions for police officers over there to help that progressive increase of the security force for the Parks Department. So I'm finding, and in the case of both the libraries and parks, we've asked for them to put together legacy programs or CIP programs. We've allocated a certain amount of funding for this. We've asked them to be very aggressive. In both cases, they have been. They're showing results to our community, and I don't want to penalize them by forcing them to slow back or move backwards, because in both cases, we only funded a portion of their programs or CIP, and we're going to be addressing the other portions of those in the years to come. Why not let them hang on to what they've got, keep pushing forward, and leave these two budgets alone? With that being said, I fully endorse the rollback as far as the general fund. And so I'd appreciate some consideration in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's important to note that as far as the parks are concerned, a reduction of 300,000 would still generate revenue for their budget in excess or 1.1 million above what they anticipated receiving. So if the issues you've indicated are priorities, there's revenue to accomplish that.
Mr. Chairman, if I can counter that, the priorities, the increased revenues are going for the general operation to increase activities and programs with parks that have been opened. And it's also working to at least deal with the certain parts of the legacy program too that have not yet been funded, and trying to escalate some of the repair in certain areas going. In addition, a portion of it, of that increase is in fact going to, I believe, jail 4 police officers in this next year, but that's not enough of what our needs are. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments?
Comment.
Mr. Schaefer.
I've done a lot of soul searching this past few weeks regarding the Parks and Recs and the library issue. And are we discussing the library issue now or the Parks and Rec issue now, or both?
I think we're at the library.
Yeah, yeah.
The library is the item on the agenda.
Generally the same, aren't they?
Yeah.
Some events that have occurred in the last few weeks, especially last weekend, regarding the successful grand opening of the new Monticello Library, and some other issues some other events held by the Park Board recently that I'm going to support Mr. Klicka's, and I agree with him in most everything he says. I think it's important to continue the legacy plan. I think the Parks and Rec and Library boards need the money to move forward with their plan, and then everyone I've talked to in my neighborhood around agree with the fact that the Parks and Rec and the library boards are our two most important visual entities that they attend and participate in. So I'm going to support Mr. Klicka's point of view.
Well, as to the library, even with the estimated revenue reduction, they would have an additional 1.1 million added to their above their 5% revenue increase estimate. So I have full faith in the professional management of both of those organizations that they'll be able to meet their objectives. Mr. Osterhaus.
I'm going to third, I guess, that. I too, much like Commissioner Ashcraft, have gone through my district on numerous occasions, and parks and libraries are always at the top of the list. And I'll agree with Commissioner Klicka's statement that, we didn't, the parks and library master plans were not fully funded at what the plans had called for. And I think this 5% that grows every year gets them a little bit closer to that. So I will be voting against any motion that cuts their mill levy. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, is it appropriate to make a motion relative to the parks?
Mr. Ashcraft
he
indicated
did,
he wanted to make a motion, so we'll go there first. Michael?
That Michael.
Excuse me, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Other Michael. Just a couple of comments as I've sat and listened to what we've discussed here, and we've been having this conversation for a long time. This has been months of deliberation and conversation and debate, even between commissioners, about what should be the priority and how should it be funded. I've heard much discussion about legacy plan. And for a second, I want to pause and I want to talk about a legacy plan that isn't what anybody here so far I've heard talk about. That legacy plan that I'm talking about is a 78-year-old man that lives in Olathe in a house by himself as a widow who raised his kids, put them through Olathe schools, went to a job for 40 years that he told me, quote, I hated every day, but I did it. When the kids moved out, his wife got a job. She raised the family, and then she got a job. And together, they worked hard to pay the house off. Now, his property tax bill continues to escalate. He's lost his wife. He has a decision to make. Does he sell the house that he and his wife worked hard in a lifetime to be able to afford and pay for and pay off? Or does he skip on some medication and see if that works out? Maybe he doesn't pay his utility bill to make sure that he pays the property tax bill so his house doesn't get taken away. That's the legacy plan I'm talking about. That's his legacy plan, and he's taxpayer, and that is my first concern. That is the first thing I weigh and balance when I make these decisions. I understand that Parks has a legacy plan. I served on the Parks Board. I understand the priority, and I understand the want. I get that. I do. I understand it. I also understand the priority of the libraries and their plans and what they're trying to accomplish. But
when I know that, for instance, I just heard the number, so I'll roll that out, but $1.1 million more than was estimated is coming to parks in this instance, and I can't remember what the number is for library, but it's more money than was estimated and planned for, and we're arguing about that while I've got a gentleman who his voice is cracking on the phone telling me he's going to lose his house if his property taxes go up. I struggle with that. I struggle with that a lot. To me, that's the legacy plan. His legacy plan is what I'm worried about. That's what I think about. I like, Commissioner Ashcraft, I like your idea on the 0.3 mill roll. I think I would be supportive of that. At a minimum, I am supportive, Chairman, of the rollback on parks and on libraries, the same as it is for the general budget. And in the same breath, I will say that I love our parks and I enjoy them. I go to our libraries and I enjoy them, and so do my family and so do my kids. This is not an anti-park or anti-library maneuver. This is taking care of the legacy plan of my constituents and my taxpayers and that 78-year-old gentleman in Olathe. Thank you.
All right, any other comments? All right, Mr. Ashcraft, you said you wanted to offer a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The motion would be, and these are terms of art that I may not get exactly correct, but for libraries only.
We're talking about libraries at this point, yes.
To reduce the mill levy 0.03 on the legacy plan mill levy increase only, which was 0.75 from 2016. Is that what you said, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I believe that's right.
And that would not affect the rest of the mill increase and revenue increase of the libraries, but would send a message that we are living within our budgets for the library.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to recommend a reduction in anticipated revenue to the library, and what would that amount be, Mr. Neufeld?
That would be a reduction of an additional approximately 230,000, 227.8.
Total would be 460,000, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. So the what's in the briefing sheet is approximately 230. This would be an approximate additional 230 for a total of 460 below a constant mill levy.
Okay, all right. So the motion before us is to authorize a reduction in the mill levy, which would be equivalent to $460,000 for the library's
approximately, yes,
budget. Any further questions or discussion? Mr. Klicka.
I will definitely not support this, as I'm taking the whole complete opposite role. But should this item not pass, I'd like to offer another motion, please. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll not support this motion. I've would support the original rollback that was indicated of a little less than $300,000 in their general fund, and leave the capital mill levy alone. So that's my position. Any other discussion? All right, the motion is before us. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
No.
Commissioner Allen?
No.
Commissioner Klicka?
No.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
No.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert?
No. I have 2 votes in favor, 5 opposed, so that motion did not pass. Mr. Klicka, you said you had a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we, for the library, for the library, that we maintain the current mill levy as stands and approve that within with the proposed budget.
Second.
And I would say with
clarify that.
I would say based on our current estimates of exemptions yet to go through.
So noted.
Okay. Motion before us is to not to reduce the mill levy to the library in any regard, and So leave the library mill levy in both cases, general as well as capital, as it is.
Intact, yes.
Right.
Clarify, the motion is to approve the budget for the library district as
Could you,
proposed.
Well,
Counselor, what?
no,
Not as proposed.
not as
Oh,
proposed,
okay,
but,
you're doing an increase.
right.
Well, we're going,
Accepting into the budget the
current-
estimated revenue from the
Constant mill
appraisal
levy.
increase. Is that clear enough? Okay, all right.
I hope so.
Well, again, I'm going to oppose this motion. I think we are all aware of what happened to property appraisals in this county in 2018. We had many, many properties where the appraisals went up 10, 15, 20%. And I think we need, as a body, need to be able to recognize that. I think all of us need to exert some discipline. And even though it's not a big step, I think it's an important step to modify, reduce our mill levies for parks, libraries, and general fund.
Sure.
And I think that's very, very important that we be in a position to exercise that discipline. I'm fully supportive of the libraries. I'm fully supportive of the parks. They do great work. And if I thought that this was going to imperil their objectives of delivering services to the community, I would not be supportive. But I believe with the additional revenue that they will receive anyway, that they can meet those needs in an appropriate manner. Mr. Klicka.
Mr. Chairman, I do appreciate your comments. I do take a little bit of exception here about the discipline and so forth because in dealing with the Parks Department for the last few years, I've never seen a department so disciplined in not only dealing with their financial and their management. In fact, I do probably consider them one of the top operations we have and congratulate them for that. But at the same time, we put a lot more burden on them. We've asked them to open up the King Louis facility. We've asked them to open up more parks and things like that. And that team is, from a discipline standpoint, is working probably 150 miles per hour in trying to achieve the goals that we set for this. And while I have not been as close to the library from my take and from listening to my fellow commissioners and others, I know those folks have been doing a lot. I just hate taking anything more away from these departments that are trying to meet the immediate needs. And as Commissioner Schaefer stated, it's probably the most visible part of the services, or visible services that we provide to our full county. So again, I ask for serious consideration.
Okay, Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, obviously we have a different perspective on the dais, and we should. Yeah. I don't believe we're taking anything away from the libraries or the parks by this discussion. I think it increases the conversation and the reality of how we do government and how we fund government and our role to be fiscally responsible. And as I've said before, this revenue-based budgeting approach is the trap we get in. Just because there is money, we look for ways to spend it, and then we rationalize it, justify it, and all those things are good, but the fundamental problem is it's a cost. And I think Mr. Brown's soliloquy of the 78-year-old gentleman, I saw that and have seen that over and over again in the heart of Johnson County, District 5, so I salute the Big Six Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, pertinent point?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm going to take a little bit of exception to that because in the case of, as I'm arguing for both the libraries and parks here, I don't think it's so much revenue-based. I think they have a specific goals and objectives that they're working to meet. We made the resources available to them to work to meet those expectations. And to me, in both cases, they're even exceeding what our expectations are. So I don't see that so much that we're just throwing money. They're reacting and responding to what we've requested. So with all due respect, and I agree with you, Commissioner Ashcraft, differing of opinions at different times is all right. Sure.
All right, any other comments? Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to point out, based on my previous comments, I'll be voting for Tom's legacy plan. When I cast my vote, I will not be supportive of the motion. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments? Well, again, to clarify, the motion before us is in regards to the library. Mr. Allen.
I've been sitting here listening, and my comment is that in the past, I've been a very strong supporter and will continue to be of parks and libraries. 3 years ago, there were 4 of us here that voted for a mill levy increase for parks, library, and transit, and I'll continue to support it. I'm on the side that the revenue is going up, additional funds are, and I think it's important because of the overall appraisals situation that we have in Johnson County, that 0.25 is approximately $2.5 million. We did a 0.25 last year. That's $5 million that the county is foregone in revenue if we just would have kept the mill levy constant. And you extrapolate that over a 10-year period of time, that's $50 million. Those are significant numbers, and I think we do need to send a message to our taxpayers that we are looking, that we're going to be responsible. These incremental decreases do make a difference, but the overall budgets for the library and the parks still are significant. They have more money than was projected, and they will continue probably to have that in the future as the county continues to grow. So I know, I'm glad to hear there is a lot of support for parks and libraries, but I think we need to take a more overall look of how it affects the average taxpayer. So unfortunately, in this one, I will not be supporting the motion.
Okay. Well, again, the motion before us is to leave the mill levies at the library as they are currently stated. We've all had an opportunity to express an opinion, so the clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes. Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
No.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
No.
Commissioner Brown.
No.
And Chairman Eilert.
No. I have 4 votes opposed to the motion, so it fails. I would accept a motion to approve the library's budget with the smaller mill levy reduction, and if you'd remind us what that is, Mr. Neufeld.
Actually, what I would say is that it appears that a majority of the board is okay with the library budget as included in the briefing sheet.
I'd like a vote on this.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and vote. We'll have a vote. So do I hear a motion to approve the recommended budget for the libraries with the adjustment down in the mill levy as described in the resolution?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt the resolution in regards to the libraries with the smaller mill levy reduction. Mr. Brown.
Again, thank you, Chairman. I'll be voting for Tom's legacy plan. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? Mr. Ashcraft?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your attempts to kind of navigate this discussion. I do not feel like it is enough. I do not feel like it sets the right precedent in terms of revenue-based budgeting, but I will be supporting it because it's better than nothing. It's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
Or at least a half step.
Any other comment, Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. Just one more comment. I agree with Commissioner Ashcraft in your comment there. Some down is better than none, and going forward, looking forward to next year's budget, as we already begin to turn our attention to that, I will continue to push towards seeing overall expenditures at the county not exceed CPI.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Any questions about the motion that's before us? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
No.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
No.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion, I have 5 votes in favor. Motion carried. All right, moving to parks.
Mr. Chairman?
Any further discussion?
I'd like to make motion that we retain approve the parks budget at its current mill levy status.
With the adjustment for the planned exemptions.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded that there be no reduction in the mill levy for Parks and Recreation. Any questions about the motion? All right, if not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Allen?
No.
Commissioner Klicka?
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
No.
Commissioner Brown?
No.
And Chairman Eilert?
No. I have 4 votes opposed, 3 in favor. The motion fails. Mr. Ashcraft?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I know we're living Groundhog's Day here with a slight change of topics, but I would make the same arguments related to parks. I too am supportive of parks, but I think I have a greater commitment to taxpayers. And did you say your gentleman's name was Tom?
Tom.
Tom, I think that states that quite well, and so I would make a motion similar to the libraries, but for parks, of a reduction of 0.04 mils, which equates to about $600,000. The parks will still realize an increase of nearly $1 million from the growth that's currently in assessed values. But it will also send a message that we are concerned about taxpayer resources and taxpayer uses of their funds.
Do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded with a reduction of nearly $600,000 to the Parks and Recreation budget. Again, I will not support this. I will be supportive of the original reduction that was mentioned. Any other questions or comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
No.
Commissioner Allen?
No.
Commissioner Klicka?
No.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
No.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert?
No. I have 5 opposed to the motion, so the motion is defeated. Do I hear another motion to support the smaller reduction?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? I will second the
second
motion. Mr. Schaefer, you seconded the motion?
I do, yeah.
All right, and again, point of clarification, Mr. Neufeld, the smaller reduction would be a dollar reduction of what amount?
Approximately $300,000.
All right, that's for parks. Any further discussion of the motion? Mr. Brown?
One comment, I will be voting in support of Tom's legacy plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Ashcraft?
I have the same concerns as before and will vote accordingly.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, the motion before us is to support the lower reduction of approximately $300,000 in the Parks and Recreation budget. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka?
No.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
No.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert?
Aye. I have 5 votes in favor, 2 opposed. The motion carried. All right. Now, we need to consider the total budget resolution with those items as part of it. And I want to make note of this. The budget does not include any increase in salary for commissioners. All other elected officials are to be participate in the merit pool increase, but commissioners will be excluded from any consideration of that for about the 8th or 9th year in a row.
And I would note that the commissioners does include the chair.
Yes, true. We've had a lot of discussion before the board. I would, before we hear a motion, or perhaps we need a motion, and then would be glad to receive any comments from those who are present. Mr. Allen.
I move to approve and adopt resolution number 06518, adopting the fiscal year 2019 budget and fiscal year 2019-2023 capital improvement program as proposed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded, excuse me. We're not going to vote yet.
No.
The motion has been made. Anyone who's present who would like to address the commission on this item would welcome you to the podium and receive that information. Is there anyone present who would like to address the commission on this item? All right, if there's not, it's back before the commission. Mr. Klicka?
Mr. Chairman, recognizing that this is how this vote could come down and recognizing the passion that I'm trying to forward here relative to the parks and the libraries and the services that they provide, I will support this motion from this standpoint. To argue over in $1 billion budget over $500,000 here is not worth the time and effort for the benefit of the whole county. And life will go on. I've enjoyed kind of the discussion here that's gone on, but I will support the motion as a whole.
Okay. Any other comments on the motion? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to offer an adjustment to this motion, an amendment. I've raised this issue before. We currently are scheduled to offer, I believe, a 3% salary increase for employees, and our employees do great work, and I have a lot of respect for them. But that increase tends to be just another increase rather than being linked to corporate performance or governmental performance. And what I'd like to do, and I've raised this issue before, is make a motion that we reduce the salary increase from 3% to 2.5%, but add a 1% increase if employees are able to find savings to correspond to that increase. So the thought process is to change our incentives because I believe they're misaligned. This would incentivize our employees to look for savings, and if they can produce those savings for us, then they would reap that benefit. So I would like to ask a motion be considered to move from 3% to 2.5% plus the opportunity, I should say, for employees to find one-time savings of up to another 1%.
Do I hear a second? The motion dies for lack of a second. Any other amendments to be offered? Any other discussion? Mr. Ashcraft.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I continue to have reservations about the budget process, excuse me, not the budget process, but the process by which we expend funds. I do not believe we have established and maintained performance metrics that justify continued increases that we currently have. I do not believe we go through the steps of the HPO, the High Performance Organization, of accountability and of budgetary management that we should. So consequently, while I have some support for the efforts to reduce the expenditures in libraries and parks, overall I have great reservations about the revenue-based budgeting approach that we use and the costs associated with that, and the fact that we do not have metrics that support that to the tune, to the degree that $1 billion corporation should have. Consequently, my vote will reflect those concerns.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I am not opposed to the idea of setting it up to have performance-based bonus as opposed to straight line increases. I just, my lack of interest in a second on that motion stems from I don't think that at this time, at this place, right now, this late in the process, is a good time to be tweaking it at that level. I'm perfectly prepared and willing to have that conversation, Commissioner Ashcraft, as we move forward in our next budgeting cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Well, let me make this clarification. The 3% is a merit pool.
Yes, sir.
And department directors have the opportunity to, the flexibility within that merit pool to recognize outstanding performance of employees or the lack thereof in determining what that merit percentage might be for an individual employee. So there is the ability of department directors and agency directors to evaluate and make those decisions based upon performance.
Chairman,
So, yeah.
I would also add that we do have bonus programs in place as well.
All right, thank you very much.
Mr.
Any further?
Chairman?
Yes.
You raise a valid point, but what I would like to offer clarification of is to incentivize our employees to look at those cost savings, because they know the organization, they know what works and what could work, and to give them that motivation is the thrust, or was the thrust of my motion.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right, the motion is before us. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
No?
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you all very much. Good discussion. Are there any other items on the action agenda?
No, sir.
All right, moving to reports and communications. County Manager, Ms. Postoke Ferguson.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I would like to just say another thank you to the Budget Office, Scott Neufeld, and partnering with me and the county management team and others to put together my first recommended budget to you all. So Scott, thank you for the partnership, and Robin Symes and the Budget Office. I do want to also thank the sheriff and his partnership as well, because we worked through, we couldn't fund everything, but I think we came to a place that we could partner together and continue to build that relationship. And then also the county manager's office staff, Maury and Joe and Aaron and Cindy, and I might as well list the whole department, both budget office and the county manager's office, but also the departments, because we all pulled together as an executive leadership team to really address what we felt was a responsible budget, and also produce things that obviously you could support and were aligned with your strategic priorities. So a big thank you to the teamwork that was put forward to present that budget to you, and with the adjustments that you all made. Thank you. Also, the City of Lenexa on July 17th approved the redevelopment project plan in City Center. It's you've seen a number of these come forward. This particular project plan totals $3,378,609. The project cost for this plan, with incentives at approximately $2.2 million. And then the next item, I would like to ask Johnson County Election Commissioner Ronnie Metzger to come forward and present us with some information on the primary election that happened this week. Ronnie, thank you.
Mr. Metzger.
Ronnie Metzger, Johnson County Election Office. Thank you, Penny. Appreciate your remarks. And to the Board of County Commissioners, always thank you for your past, present, and continuing support for all that we do in the election office. We deeply appreciate all of your support that you have demonstrated consistently. I would also like to say thank you to our incredible staff in the election office. These people have worked so hard and long hours. We recently encountered working 29 hours straight during a difficult period during the election, and they are incredible. So I want to thank them. I'd like to also thank 1,250 election workers made up of citizens of our community who volunteer to do this task of execution of our elections, and they all came and sat for 5 hours minimal of training and lab work to learn a new system that the voting machines themselves and the new system performed admirably well and executed a beautiful election this past Tuesday night. And these are people who have some volunteered for over 25 years and yet were asked to step up and operate a brand new machine. and they did so very well. We had a couple of bumps in 4 or 5 places as we opened up, but by and large, the day went very smoothly during the election. The machinery also worked extremely well with no flaw during 13 days of advanced voting, in which about 8% of the vote that came out voted during the advanced vote. A couple of facts just so everyone understands. Johnson County has an all-time record registration number of 407,925, almost 408,000, and that is an all-time registration record. Our election that we just experienced, as you've seen the returns so far, involves a 29.1% turnout. And when I say so far is because this election is not over. As we all know, there is a canvass yet to occur, commencing 9 o'clock next Monday morning, in which the commission serves as the canvass board. I'd like to report that we have approximately 1,850 provisional ballots that will begin the pool of ballots that will be considered as we prepare for that, beginning yesterday, and we will be ready by Monday to present those ballots to you for your consideration. Remind you as well that the legislature recently passed a bill allowing the USPS to provide to us additional ballots that were mailed by the voters but not yet received at the election office. Those ballots are being accumulated and will be considered along with the rest of the provisional ballots. So there are yet quite a few potential votes that are out there that will be considered. And it is, of course, as you realize your responsibility, that will be your decision as we prepare the reports and the recommendations for you to make the decision on the votes that shall be counted and shall not be counted. And then we will update the results and bring the report back to you later in the day on Monday. And at that point during the canvass, we will complete the work and certify the election in Johnson County. So I just wanted to underscore my thanks to all those involved. There are a lot of stakeholders involved here. There was a lot that went right about this election. And we had 1,250 well-trained volunteers as election workers and others who were trained and helped us execute this election, and some of the administration issues and registration issues within the election office itself around Election Day. People like the Olathe North High School Senior National Honor Society that helped bring the resources back into the office on election night, those critical pieces such as the thumb drives, the USB sticks. They all have, there are many names for this media piece, and depends on what your nomenclature is, but it's all one and the same, to the provisional ballot bags and other critical supplies that were out at the election site. Everything else comes back over the period of a week as we return all of that back into the warehouse, the secured warehouse at the election office. So just a quick review for some that may not remember. You authorized $13.1 million for the acquisition of this, and we did do our due diligence, and those involved in making the selection of this system were the election office staff, and in addition, we added critical players from the balance of departments within our county. A half a dozen or so members of the team in DTI were engaged and involved in the research process, and members from purchasing, budget, legal, and other departments were engaged and involved, and we so much appreciated all of the support and their expertise. We did execute a steering committee, which involved 3 members of DTI and members of those other groups that I mentioned just now, to finalize the decision of the choice of the election systems that we purchased. And that involved a purchase of $10.5 million. So while we were discussing the budget today, I was reminded of the fact that in the case of our office, we came back and we were exercising as much focus on financial stewardship of the taxpayer dollars in the county to come back and spend what we needed to execute an election well, but to be very considerate of the fact that this is resource from our taxpayers and the voters of Johnson County. In the system, some of the high points, 2,100 voting machines. We have taken delivery of the first 1,100. The other 1,000 will come at approximately September the 8th as we complete this transaction, and all of it is fully brought into our system. So this contract is live and has not been fully executed yet and is still under consideration for fulfilling the terms of the contract. Now let's skip forward to the election night itself. Everything, as I said, about election, the election prior to election night went extremely smooth. We had no difficulties, and indeed, on Thursday, according to the standards from the Secretary of State's Office of Elections, we began the tabulation, I should say the uploading of the data from the machines that were used during advance vote. And when we uploaded that data into the reporting software, went lightning fast and performed as expected. The next time we went to enter the data was when we began to receive the reports, the USB sticks that were located at the polling locations. And as we demonstrated to you, we don't have a card for every machine in this new system. Rather, we have a USB for every machine, and then in addition, we have a master USB stick at each polling location where the vote totals of each location are aggregated onto one USB. And so instead of downloading or uploading the data from 1,650 cards as we did in the general election in the presidential, we only had to upload 192, one from each voting location. That's helpful to understand changes, and all of this involves a learning curve for everyone, of course. That's when we noticed that we had a problem within the reporting software system. As the wheel just turned and turned and turned like it was thinking. We've all experienced that on various technology pieces in the past. On site, we had from ES&S, the manufacturer, 8 of their very finest technicians and representatives, many of which were involved in building the architecture. We were perplexed and dismayed and very disappointed when all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't solve the problem. And we're very, very disappointed for ourselves, for the county, and for the voters, the state, and anyone else that's a stakeholder in the outcome of this election coming out of Johnson County. We were assured all through the evening, leading up to and during the evening, that we had done nothing wrong. When I say we, I'm speaking about county employees, election office employees, the election commissioner, the leadership of the election commissioner, as we continue to seek to execute this and finalize this election. They took full ownership of the problem and had consulted with the other engineers in Omaha, their home base, where they design, build, and service the equipment that we purchased in our contract. So clearly the problem is isolated down to a pinch point at the point of uploading the data into the reporting software. And that's when we had our first problem, and it continued right through the evening, much to our disappointment. So yesterday I was privileged to facilitate a meeting with our chairman, Ed Otter, with the representatives who have come to be boots on the ground here with us. And as a result of that meeting, the chairman requested that the company make a statement to clarify. And this has been produced and released to the media, so everyone has had an opportunity to review this, but in essence, in this report, they take full ownership for the failure of their system on election night. They also show and demonstrate resolve that they will find the problem, fix the problem, and give us surety it will never occur again, that this will be a one-time event. Hasn't been an enjoyable experience for me, and so I do have a great deal of respect for the members of this company, and it is a fine company, and I have every reason to believe that they will get this corrected ASAP, and we will not experience this problem again. But again, this was out of our hands, out of our control. We did everything we were to do in a timely fashion, and then we experienced the problem. So might I make that my initial response, and perhaps there are some questions that might be asked. We don't know yet what the problem was specifically. We're leaving that to them to dig into the architecture of their system. I'm sure that members of DTI here within the county will be available to help us in that assessment and be sure that we have resolved the problem at the point that we do. These are issues of a learning curve. I want us all to recognize that. And I've tried to exhibit what I would call common grace, where we cut each other some slack. We have a brand new piece of equipment, a brand new piece of software. Didn't work quite right. All of us have experienced purchasing something of a piece of technology that didn't work quite right, had to be corrected, and then it worked quite fine. And I think that that would be my suggestion, is that we're in that period of time where we need to adjust and allow the corrections to be made. I do want to make one further comment about the learning curve. This was a learning curve for ES&S, who's producing a piece of gear that was used for the first time in a live election when we began using it for advance vote on the 23rd of July and continuing to Election Day on Tuesday of this week. It was a learning curve for our office staff to learn all of the new system, the software, the machinery, the hardware. It was a learning curve for the election workers, who many of which had worked for many, many years. They were very experienced as election workers, but it still made it a first time for them when they had to use brand new equipment. It was the first time for the voters, and I congratulate the voters who acclimated quite well to new systems. Part of our decision criteria in making the selection was to choose machines that would be very similar and would not be a huge learning curve jump from the past machine to the new machine. And I think we accomplished that and met all of the other criteria as well. And so it was also a new learning curve for the public at large, beyond the voters, and for the media. I will say that our office provided this equipment for 56 hours of public viewing to come and test it out, try it out, and take it for a test drive in various places throughout the community, something ES&S said is unprecedented. And so we've made it available to everyone we possibly could so that we could aid in that learning curve. And many did. Many people have responded to us that they had a great experience at the polls. And as is always the case in our election office, we always analyze and assess our performance after the fact, tweak and make changes necessary to our procedures and processes, and if need be, even our training program for our election workers. And then we get better. And in the words of Hannes Zacharias, working to make everything better, one thing better every day. And at the end of the year, we'll have 3,000 things that are better with all of our staff following that motto. So I stand for questions.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that report. Let me say this. I did have the opportunity to meet with Mr. Metzger. Mr. Waters was present with the vendor yesterday morning, and the message was specifically direct. What occurred during the uploading of the ballot information was not acceptable and needed to be corrected. and the assurance was that it would be corrected. Beyond the public announcement that they issued, the commitment from the representative who was in the office is that they owned it, it was their problem, and that they would fix it. I would also note the contract is not complete. And what happened in May was to authorize the contract. And that contract is complete upon the acceptance of the product by the county. And so that has not been completed. I know there was some comment about the county spending $11 million on a system that did not work. We have not spent that money. I would re-emphasize the contract is not complete until we are satisfied with the performance of the product. Let me come back to something else. We will have a vote canvass Monday morning.
That's correct.
And the mail ballot, by statute, if a mail ballot is postmarked before 7 p.m. on Election Day, but delivered on Thursday or Friday, it has to come into the pool to be considered to be counted. Is that right?
That's correct.
So we have today and tomorrow where there could be additional mail ballots that come in correctly posted that would be part of that consideration. So what I'm saying, point I'm getting to is that in many instances, a canvass takes about 30 or 45 minutes. Do not be surprised if this canvass, we already indicated there are 1,800 some provisional ballots. We don't know how many more mail ballots will come in on the next couple of days, but this could take more than 30 minutes. I'll say that. Those things to be looked forward to. And I would say this: the one everybody had looked for the ability to have a paper trail of the electronic voting machine. That was successful. Everybody had an opportunity to look at their ballot before it was tabulated by the machine. Mm-hmm. Those paper ballots are available for, I hear discussion about a recount statewide.
That is correct.
And so all of that information, all of that data is available if there is any question. And I should also emphasize the security of the ballot information was never in question. So,
that is correct.
Chairman.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Metzger, for your report. My question regards to Monday, the ballots that are taken in, then uploaded. Is there a possibility that that may take longer than usual based on what's going on? The county knows.
First of all, we have done scanning of the ballots during advanced vote. We have 2 DS-850 high-speed scanners. It is breathtaking how fast they are. And in the uploading of the advanced vote, it took seconds, as I said in my report. I don't expect we're going to have that problem again, but again, we'll have to wait and see. This is for ES&S to decipher the problem, and I can only imagine what's happening in Omaha as we're speaking right now, as they are churning to make sure that this software works correctly when we get to Monday.
Thank you.
Mr. Klicka.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. First of all, Commissioner, thanks for your report. Appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
I know the frustration that everyone experienced, like myself, waiting for the results to come in and some not going to bed very early in order to get the results. And I know the expectation, we all have that expectation to get, we'd love to have those results by 7:05 if we could. And being caught in that process, I know that expectation is not going to happen. With that being said, first of all, I have to compliment both you and your team. Your team over at going through this challenge here over the last few months. Well, let's take it this way. It's taken a number of years to get a new system identified in place. You opted for the primary election as a way that, literally, as a way to at least introduce the new system and get it out and try to get through some of the potential challenges if there were. Well, fortunately, there were very few challenges. It all boiled down to the software glitch on the reporting. As far as the integrity of all the machines, everything like this, it went well. From a voter experience standpoint, I'm one, I elected to vote early, went to Hilltop, and it took me a little bit longer because it was a new process. I was learning along the way. And the staff that helped me through that, it's amazing. I watched how they interacted with every voter that walked in to make sure that they were comfortable. And to do that and go through a major transition on a $13 million investment here that we're rolling out literally all in one day to the general public, and then early voting, it's pretty phenomenal. I want to say you all did what you needed to do, and I'm real pleased on that. I also want to credit even the vendors. They've been with us all through this whole process, trying to anticipate what could, in fact, happen. And I understand that they were there throughout the night, well, weeks before, as they brought the system in, helped with the training and everything like this. And they've stuck with the process. They didn't bail out, and finally, they acknowledged their errors with the software that needed to be repaired. And for that, you know what, how far can you beat somebody up when they admit there's a mistake, okay? So with that all being said, I realize that some of the public perception or some of the folks out there want to just throw darts and go through it. But from a private business standpoint, we have various startups, and the whole reason you go through a startup process is to try to learn, fix, get it where it's running perfect. And fortunately, 99% of it was great. The 1% that went screwy, it happened to be the one that impacted was the reporting side. And I'm confident we're going to get that squared away and just hang with the folks and keep them moving. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, building a little bit on what Commissioner Klicka offered, Commissioner Metzger, over the last 6-8 months, I have observed that your efforts have been sincere, thoughtful, and dedicated. But I want to offer an apology because I think it is sad, very sad, that some sources have called for your resignation and in some way tried to label you as a scapegoat for this. And I just think it's sad. I'm sure there's another term for that. I want you to know that from time to time, I've been a critical observer of governmental operations and probably yours, but you have done nothing. As a matter of fact, you have just been a stellar example of what good government is, what dedicated public service is, and for someone to, or some group, or to suggest that you should resign for this is just, I don't know what the word is, but it's sad. You have my full faith and support, and I think probably I can speak for every commissioner up here that and you will get to the bottom of it, and I am confident that whatever glitches happen this time, by the time the general election comes around, we will be in high clover, as they say, and that will be because of you, sir, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Would like to say to the Commissioner that I understand your explanation fully, and that a software issue being what it is what it is. We're not talking about a human error on the part of Johnson County Elections. Johnson County Election Office and all of the employees, including you, have my full support going forward, never wavered. I will take Commissioner Ashcraft's comments one step further, and I will say to the Kansas City Star and the reporters in the room who are a part of that organization, please carry this message back. It was reckless and it was irresponsible of the editorial board to call for the resignation of anyone in a newspaper when you didn't have all of the information. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Well, excuse me, Mr. Osterhaus.
Ronnie, can you talk about a little bit about the encryption on the USB? Because I think that's important to note that it's not like you're copying a Word document from one computer to another. It's a little different than that. So.
Certainly. The deeper you go into this system and the more you explore all of the safety and security that they have built, that they, meaning ES&S, the designers, engineers, builders of this entire system, is absolutely amazing. The deeper you dig, the more you discover and you go, wow. And so I want to be careful to recognize that this is an incredible system with all kinds of safeties and safeguards that address the concerns that have been on all of our hearts and minds since, June of 2016, when the whole scandalous topic of the security of our elections in our country came into full view. So we took all of that into consideration, and our own security expert, Mike Epperson, within DTI, focused on that particular part of this equipment purchase. And so to specifically answer your question, these USBs, also known as thumb drives, media, everyone has their, USB stick. We have kind of, our nomenclature has kind of moved over to the sticks, but that's what we're referring to. It are industrial, they are proprietary. There is encryption on these sticks and all kinds of overlays of codes. If you went down to Target or Micro Center or some other location and purchased what we would commonly call a USB that you use with your PC in the office or at home, you could plug one. You could certainly physically plug one into a machine, but it would not be recognized and it would do absolutely nothing because the system is designed to work only with the specific stick for that machine, and we have to purchase it from the vendor. No one else on the street can buy these particular USB devices. I think that was the question you were looking to have answered. I hope I adequately did.
Thank you, Ron.
Well, Mr. Metzger, I had this question yesterday from a reporter who referenced a audit of the election office that was done a couple of years ago before your arrival, before your appointment to that office. It was a very negative report, and in my own words, the office was almost dysfunctional, except for the dedicated employees who had been there and knew the job that was required. And many of those employees continue, and under your direction, the culture and I think the ability of that office to perform has been changed to the good, and that's a result of your effort. And so I want to compliment you. I want to compliment the workers in the office, also the volunteers who's without help, we could not carry out this function. And I know the level of your integrity in working in this position, and I am sure that that your work will continue to right the technical problem that the vendor has admitted was their error, and we look forward to that being accomplished. And again, it's very, very simple. The contract is not complete until the system works as it's supposed to. So folks should keep that in mind. Ronnie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate those
Chairman.
comments.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Penny.
And before we leave the subject, I mentioned the vote canvass Monday. So if you're not going to be able to be there for the entire week, whoever sets Monday would have to be present Wednesday if you're if it's required. So if you cannot be there for several days in a row or several days next week, we will have somebody fill in. But whoever sets their Monday has to be available for whatever discussions need to occur. So, and you can let Linda know in that regard. All right, we'll turn to commission comments, even though there's been a lot of them so far today. We will close with that. Mr. Schaefer, anything you'd like to offer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been a busy week in spite of the elections, okay? Last Sunday, and we'll hear about it from the majority and the remainder of the commissioners, the grand opening, I call it, of the Monticello Library. I know a lot of us attended, and I was nothing short of amazed about the building, the interest, the dedication that was presented by the staff, and the love of the building by the citizens who had tried to get under it many times before and finally were able to make it. So congratulations, library system. That was great. Monday had attended an open house at the Shawnee Mission School District. We had a chance to meet our new superintendent, Dr. Mike Fulton, for Shawnee Mission School District. That was a great event. I know Chair was there as well, and probably a couple other commissioners, which I weren't able to see. But anyway, that was a great event. Tuesday evening, United Healthcare sponsored a Pulse event with the Mental Health Department. Tanner, Chairman Ed, and a couple other Kansas citizens were on a panel that was broadcast worldwide. So that was a great event, Tanner. Thank you for putting that together for us, for a chance to be a part of that as well. And again, Tuesday afternoon, after the evening, I voted, and I had no issues with the vote machine. So it was nice, like Commissioner Klicka said. The staff there was very cooperative, and they were very smart in giving us the direction we needed to do to make sure the machine worked. And then last night, an inaugural event by Shawnee Mission School District Education Foundation, sponsored by themselves. It was a new event titled Distinguished Leaders Speakers Series. And this was the first event, and Dr. Milton Chin spoke. He's the Executive Director Emeritus of the George Lucas Educational Foundation. And the title of his presentation was Imagine an Education Nation, a learning society where the education of children and adults is the highest national priority, on par with a strong economy, high employment, and national security. It was a great event, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Klicka.
At this point, just want to note that the Parks and Recreation Department have started opening up portions of Meadowbrook, and some of the trails are open to the general public, and that'll keep progressing down the line. And I expect Stillwell Park will be opening very quickly. They're finishing up the touches on the Universal system, and we're expecting a ribbon cutting or whatever sometime in September. Thank you.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Allen.
Just a quick comment on the library, very successful. When I left the event, I thought it was unusual. The building had reached capacity, and there was a long line winding quite a ways for people to get in the library. It just shows there is tremendous interest in our libraries.
Now, what city was that in, Mr. Allen?
Mr. Osterhaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll echo the comments about Dr. Fulton and the Monticello opening. Very good. Great to see everyone there and out for that. I had the opportunity also on Sunday to be part of Troop 218's Eagle Scout Court of Honor, to be their speaker. It was a great honor for me, both as an Eagle Scout and as a commissioner, to give them some words. Hopefully those 6 men got a little bit of wisdom out of it. And then I wore red today because it's the preseason, football starts, and the Chiefs play the Texans tonight at 7:30, so go Chiefs.
Hey, they have a better season than the baseball
Mr. Brown.
team.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a few items for anyone who tried to get a hold of me on Friday. My phone completely crashed, and I don't mean ran out of battery. I mean it died completely. So I got a new phone. If you were trying to get a hold of me on Friday and you didn't hear from me, I'm still getting trickle text messages and voicemails that just pop into my phone. So my apologies if you didn't hear back. Johnson County Fair Parade and the fair itself were over the weekend, and the parade was well attended and saw lots of familiar faces there. It was a very good parade. Attended the Monticello Library grand opening with several other commissioners, and it's a beautiful building. It's fabulous. Point out that on Monday I attended in Topeka the Kansas Transportation Vision Task Force meeting. I believe I've got this right. There are 31 members on the board, 29 voting, 2 ex officio. It's the largest, well, second largest board I've ever been on. It's going to be interesting.
Good luck.
It'll be interesting. And then last night was the apportionment meeting for sewers being turned over, low pressure sewers at Gardner Lake, and the apportionment meeting went well, and everybody was very happy.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you all very much. Again, a special thank you and recognition the Monticello Library branch opening, as Mr. Allen indicated, the building was at capacity and people were asked to wait outside, so we didn't get in trouble with the fire marshal. And well attended, and so thank you all very much. We do have a request for an executive session. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that the board recess its open meeting and convene in an executive session at approximately 11:45 a.m. for a period of 15 minutes for the purpose of receiving the advice of counsel and to preserve attorney-client privilege, and for an additional period of 5 minutes for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected officials and to protect employee privacy, and to reconvene an open session in this room at approximately 12:05 p.m. or soon thereafter, as the executive session may end.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the request for the executive session. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Clicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhouse.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. We do have a special PBC meeting, which we will attend to immediately, and that will be followed by agenda review and then the executive session. So we are in recess from our regular business session. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Huh? No, I haven't. I haven't checked your text. How you doing this morning? Commissioners, we need together for the PBC meeting.
Second?
At this time, we'll call to order the special PBC meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer. Commissioner Allen. Here. Commissioner Klicka.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. We have a quorum present. Would the clerk please read the first item?
Consider approving the August 2nd, 2018 meeting minutes.
Do I hear a motion?
For approval?
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Any additions or corrections? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer. Aye. Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 2, resolution number PBC 003-18. Consider approving to authorize the issuance by the Public Building Commission of Johnson County, Kansas, of its lease purchase revenue bonds, Series 2018B, in the aggregate principal amount to be determined, but now estimated to be $163,925,000 for the purpose of funding construction of the new county courthouse and medical examiner's facility.
Mr. Blum, you've got the good news to share with us.
Yes, Nate Bloom, Budget Office. Yesterday morning, we held our PBC bond sale to fund the courthouse medical examiner facility. We received 7 bids with a low bid from Wells Fargo Bank. The final par amount of the bonds is $148,595,000 with a true interest cost of 2.39%.
Wow. Questions?
I'm sorry. That's great.
2.39%.
What was the term? What was the term?
Right. Right.
20?
Term?
The
20
average.
20 years?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Terrific news.
yeah, great job. Dave?
These are a
anything
9-year
you-
term.
Nine-year.
9-year term.
Nine-year term, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can guarantee the price of steel, and we're set.
It's incredible.
Mr. McGilvray, any comments you'd like to make to the board? All right, thank you.
Dave McGilvery from Springstead, good morning. I just want to put this in context. Approximately 2 weeks ago, the county sold general obligation bonds, approximately $250 million, a very large issue both for the county and in the market. And then we waited on purpose for this 2 weeks to have a bit of a gap so that could be absorbed. And so there's always particularly what happened in between in terms of the market and the performance of this issue. During that time, the market stayed basically flat, so there's really no noticeable change in interest rates between that general obligation sale and this sale. And then comparing, the interest rates you received on this to the general obligation bonds, PBC bonds are not going to have a slight interest rate premium above a general obligation. In this case, it was extremely minimal. I mean, it's like 0.02% to about 0.07% So it's extremely, and that's sort of natural to the difference between the two different credit qualities. So we think it was a highly successful sale, lots of bids on 2 very large transactions.
We had what, 7 bids? Do you recall the range? I think they were all very close.
239 to 245.
Oh, is that right?
So
Okay.
0.06 of 1% between 7.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Mr. Allen?
Just a quick question, since the interest rates, I believe, are lower than what we projected, so the overall interest cost on this project should leave more money for the actual construction of the building.
That would be a question I'm not sure I can answer. But the interest cost below what we estimated when you began, and in late April, early May with the formal process to what we received today, the total debt service is about $4 million less.
Okay.
So
Very
what
good.
you do with it is somewhat up to you.
Thank you. Well,
That's the number I wanted to hear.
appreciate your help on this. Any other questions? All right, motion, Mr. Klicka?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve and adopt resolution number PBC-003-18, authorizing the issuance of PBC lease purchase revenue bonds, Series 2018A, in the aggregate principal amount of $148,595,000 for the purpose of paying for a portion of the cost of construction, equipping, furnishing, the new courthouse and medical examiner's facility, and authorizing the execution and delivery of certain other documents and the taking of certain other actions in connection with the issuance of said bonds.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the acceptance of the bid as noted. Any further questions or discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen. Aye. Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Any other items?
No, sir.
All right, we are adjourned from the PBC meeting, and we'll come back for agenda review. We continue in recess from our regular session. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are you serious? Seriously, none of you become a doctor. Seriously. Wow. Seriously, what is this? Did you sneeze?
Yeah, that's my signature. Well, hey.
Steve already.
Are you ready?
Yeah, the chairman's doing interviews.
You want to get started?
Yeah, get Ron if you can.
Oh, we got enough here.
We got enough. Let's go. Let's go. This is just agenda review.
Good morning. Call for agenda review for the August 16th, 2018 business session. Lynn, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer, he's in the building. Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Klicka.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown. And Chairman Eilert is in the building.
Thank you. Clerk, please read the consent agenda.
Item number 1, consider approving the Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, for the grant application by the City of Olathe through the Bureau of Justice Assistance Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance 2018 grant program to include Johnson County as a party, together with the cities of Olathe, Overland Park, and Shawnee.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this item?
Stays on consent docket?
Okay, thank you.
Fine.
All right.
Clerk, please read the action agenda.
Item number 2, consider approving the July 26, 2018 business session minutes.
This item needs to stay on the action agenda. Commissioner Klicka was absent. Item 3,
Resolution number 055-18, application numbers SE-PRUR-3405 and SE-PDP-3406, SP. Consider a request from Robert S. Murphy Trust, applicant owner, for rezoning from RUR Rural District to PRUR Planned Rural District and Preliminary Development Plan plat approval for 10 residential lots on approximately 80 acres, Copper Hill Estates 2, at 15315 West 191st Street.
Thank you. Ms. Jagan.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see any of the planning staff. I guess it's,
Mr. Greeley.
today they decide to show.
Tough, tough, tough.
Good morning.
I apologize.
No, you're fine.
It's been a morning, hasn't it? Have you read the item in, Linda? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Just real quickly, this may look familiar to you. Back last year, this 80-acre parcel was before this board for a 4-lot, 20-acre lots subdivision from Mr. Murphy. It's at 191st and Lackman. Mr. Murphy has retained the property since that plat and has come back in with a proposal to further divide the property that you can see here on the screen. That involves a rezoning and another plat application. The rezoning is to the planned rural district, which is the 10-acre district, but it allows for bonus lots. And with each 30 acres, you can have a bonus lot. So on 80 acres, Mr. Murphy qualifies for 2 bonus lots. So there's 10 lots in this proposed subdivision under the planned zoning. The development plan is on the screen here. 2 of the lots up along 191st Street, 10-acre lots, front directly to 191st Street. The remaining 8 lots will take access through this new cul-de-sac street. The zoning board and staff both recommend approval. On the summary sheet, you see some edits and changes by the zoning board. Planning staff is fine with those edits. We don't have any concerns going forward. Those were good fixes and changes that the zoning board and the applicant came up with during the public hearing. I do need to explain a couple things about the details of this motion to approve the zoning and the plat. There's a waiver, okay? And the waiver regards these 2 lots that front out to 191st Street. Technically, in this type of a subdivision, all the lots should front on a street, which 8 of the 10 are, except these 2 large 10-acre lots. You may remember from the original design, there was a shared driveway up here. This continues that. We don't have a problem at this large lot size that this waiver be granted. 3 other things, plat exceptions. One is regarding the cul-de-sac street. Technically, this street should go on through all the way over to the left side of the perimeter of the property. As you can see, it stops short. There is an area on the plat that shows a future street alignment. When either this property internally redevelops into smaller lots, say, or property to the west develops. So that's a good thing there, and that's a reason to support the plat exception for a cul-de-sac street versus a through street. The other plat exception has to do with some of these irregular shaped lots, narrow and long. There's 5 of them. That's called the depth to width ratio. You've heard that before. We're recommending, zoning board staff recommending to approve that exception on those 5 lots. And then the final plat exception consideration is the minimum lot width, which 4 of the lots have a narrower dimension out at the street than is typical. Again, recommending to approve those as well. I believe that's it. As far as my report, I'm available for questions.
Mr. Chairman, I will not be here next week, but I'm familiar with the project, and I'll ask commissioners for their favorable consideration as an action item, but this will have to stay as an action item.
Thank you. Any further questions? This is a zoning item, will remain on the action agenda. Item 4.
IFB number 2018-054, consider authorizing a contract with multiple vendors in the amount of $112,734 for the purchase of crime lab equipment maintenance.
Good morning, Ms. Friedel.
Hi, I'm Leslie Friedel from the Sheriff's Office, and I'm pitch hitting for Major Capps, who's the Crime Lab Director. Here with me today as well is Robin Lines from Purchasing, and also the Assistant Crime Lab Director, David Wright. So if there's questions I can't answer, I have backup. This is to authorize a contract with multiple vendors. The total amount's $112,734,000. We have taken the opportunity over the last couple of years to bundle a lot of these maintenance agreements, and then so we went out this year for bid, and by separating them into two different vendors, we were able to save some significant amount of money. However, the total is still over $100,000, so we're required to bring it before the board for consideration.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Friedel, I like the approach, so I commend you if you led that effort, or Ms.
I was
Lyons.
actually out of the country, so I had, had nothing to do with it, but thank you.
But I mean, it makes sense, so I appreciate you're trying to be a little bit creative and innovative in trying to approach issues like this, and I think you're right, you probably did save some money, so good job for whoever was responsible. Thank you.
Consent agenda?
Consent, fine.
Okay.
Consent?
Yes.
Thank you. Item 5.
Consider renewing the fire district. At this point, the board is sitting as the fire district number 2 governing board. Consider renewing the fire district number 2, FD2, property, commercial, general, and automobile liability, public officials liability, crime, cyber liability, workers' compensation, and umbrella liability insurance program for the period August 21st, 2018 to August 21st, 2019, with the incumbent carriers for a total premium of $120,128.
Good morning, Chief.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Thank you for having me here today. This is our annual renewal of our workers' compensation and the rest of the liability property auto package. We're presently insured by ESIP for the